So we are never trying to be just another place that gives more information. The truth is, we're trying to give time-tested and proven truths that equip you to be wise in a culture of just information. We know that you have been entrusted to shepherd innocent hearts and minds and souls, and you're doing it in a time that is like no other. You're doing it in a virtual, distracting world that has commercials exploding, that has alerts and alarms going off, begging for attention 24/7. We recognize that you're battling screens in a way that I never battled screens raising my children. And we recognize that these screens are causing compulsive behavior, isolation, anxiety, and literally stopping brain growth. So we could not be prouder of you guys taking this time to set aside to equip yourself to be wise. If you don't mind, if you would join in me, I would love to open in prayer. Father God, you created the family. You created the family with this beautiful design to be the refuge from the world, to be the safe place where we can learn how to relate to one another and we can make mistakes with each other and we will be gracious with each other. And so, God, would you please take this time this morning and use it to build and strengthen families. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, well, to further equip you, I've got 2 giveaways now, and we'll give 2 more off at the end. The first one is a hot item in the book world, The Anxious Generation, How the Great Renewing of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. So the winner of this is 853445. Who ends in 445? Woohoo! Come forward and grab that, Alan. That's awesome. Okay, and the next one, we could not be more excited because there's nothing more hot off the press. Literally, Gospel-Centered Tech, written by Nathan Sutherland. And so this one is going to 853480. Yay! I'm telling you, that's the great place to sit right now. Beautiful. Yep, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, to equip you far further, we'll pull out the big guns, Nathan himself. Nathan is a speaker, he's a writer, he's a family tech advocate. He began his career as a teacher because he longed and had a passion to see youth realize their full potential. But he has left the world of education because he is on a mission. He is on a mission to equip families with tools and confidence to raise healthy kids in a tech world. He lives here in the Pacific Northwest with his wife, his 3 kids, and 1 old dog. Would you welcome Nathan?
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Okay. I don't need to change anything. We actually didn't, real quick, tech team, we didn't talk about how far I can wander if you're recording this. Where's my wander width? Just to make sure Edges of the screen. All right, done. I mean, it's behind me, but I'll figure it out. Yeah, it's cool, fine, thank you. Hi, everyone, good morning. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and I am super excited to be here with you this morning for 2 reasons. 1, I'm passionate about the topic, and 2, I'm passionate about equipping you all, and it's hard to do if you don't show. So you've invested 2 hours of your morning. Here's what you're going to get away from this event. You're going to come away with 3 things. The ability to talk about healthy tech. The ability to communicate the gospel clearly. This is key. There's a reason I'm Gospel Tech as the organization name, because we want to make sure that you understand that if we're new creations in Christ, that should change the way we use our tech and even the tech that we engage. So then the third piece is, all right, but how do we apply that to our daily tech lives? That's the third thing you're going to come away with. And specifically, as I'll talk about more in a minute, we're going to learn about making tech safe at home. It's going to be about 90 minutes of presentation. There'll be some time for you to stop and digest. I'll explain that in a moment as well. But about 90 minutes, and then we have Q&A time at the end. All right? So if you have questions right now that you're like, I came in and I need to leave with X question answered, please write it down, because you're about to receive 90 minutes of content, and it may push that idea out of your brain. If you remember like junior high, when you would just like sit and listen to teacher and they like ask you your first name, you're like, I have no idea. Who am I? It's going to be one of those experiences, but it's good. What we have found repeatedly over the last, it's been 5 years, but 3 years really doing this format. Over the last 3 years, the reason I wrote it down in a book is because this specific conversation will give you the words to say instead of fighting with your child about tech, to fight for them. And then the steps to take to begin either continuing a healthy tech journey or to make some augmentation out of hope, not fear, to make tech safe at home. So that's what you're going to come away with today. In 2 hours, it is worth your investment. Thank you for showing up. And I'm excited to send you all out, because I have found the power of this conversation isn't because I'm smart enough. You're actually going to hear the words and probably do better in your context with your people than I ever could. And that's the cool part. I have the passion and I have some words the Lord has given me. You have the people and you're the seed cast into that garden. So I'm excited to see you go and bring the kingdom of God to where God's planted you. 2 things to introduce before we do. First is this little postcard. It's out front by the books. My admin had this idea, and it's worked awesome. Is that right setup? No, that's right setup. All right, so you basically go out, scan that with your phone. It'll send you to checkout. You can just buy the book. It sends you a receipt. You're all done. Grab a copy and go for it. My wife's book is on the back. My book is literally this talk. 10 chapters, 10 topics, all about how do we keep the gospel at the center of tech and what does that look like with kids. My wife's is, yeah, but I just want to cry. How do I possibly even engage this conversation? This is a 25-day devotional focused around how do we turn our eyes back to Jesus when we're so overwhelmed about what might happen to our kids. So if that resonates with you, by the way, she's a way better writer than me. And that's not like me just bragging on my wife. That's like the editor sent me back my copy and it looked like every 8th grade paper I've ever edited, right? Just red ink everywhere. And hers came back with a single line, no red ink. Single line in the email, this woman is a writer, full stop. And it's like, now you're just being mean. Like, you realize you edited both of our books, manuscripts, actually. So if you want to buy a book, you can do that. If for some reason you're like, you know what, I really need a book and I really need to not pay for it, okay, it's content worth stealing. So go nuts. We are a nonprofit. I can't give them all away. But at the end of the day, the goal isn't to make money on the books. The goal is to get the books to people. And if I gave them all away, I wouldn't have any money to buy more books to give to more people. So that is how you can support us. Thank you for doing that. And I'm not being facetious with that. It happens every talk. Someone goes, you know what, I really need this book and I'm just not in a spot where I can do it. Great, cool. Or you can take it with the postcard. I had someone purchase one at 1 a.m. because they're like, I got to run, but I'll buy it later. And they actually did. And I was like, well, look at you, all integrity and stuff. So that's the first thing. Second thing is there's a handout. You will want that handout on like 100-weight paper. This. Now that's paper, folks. These notes are for you to reflect on, to jot down notes. I already gave you the answers, so there's no fill in the blank anymore. That was a major feedback piece from previous conversations. So a little bit, just a skosh of research. And instead of packing tons in, I gave you some quotes that make it make sense. So basically like a mini version of my book on the back. This is important for you. Make sure you've got one. They're out in the entry. And then finally, to help break down all the words I'm going to say, there will be times when 8th grade teacher Nathan's going to show up, and I'm going to tell you to find an elbow partner. So we're going to do that now. Find someone you can bump with an elbow. Actually do this, because it's going to be a part of our conversation. You can have up to 2 because you have 2 elbows. So it's okay if there's a group of 3. If you're not bumping anyone's elbow, you might find me being your buddy. So you might want to find someone quick. I actually walk out there and talk with you. It's terrifying. People are like, he can leave the stage. Why? That's going to be important because 3 different times I'm going to actually have you turn and reflect with a neighbor as like a way to process what we just discussed. All right? All right. Now then, a little bit about me for context first, is I was a middle school teacher for a decade. I taught 8th grade language arts, which is phenomenal. I love 8th grade language arts. I love it for 2 reasons. One, because I like language arts. It helps young people communicate and understand one another. They all come in and be like, I already speak English. I don't need this class. I'm like, shut your face. We're going to learn how to communicate clearly. But the second piece is they're 8th graders, and 8th graders feel no need to lie to you. They will show up and be like, your shoes don't match, your face looks dumb, and I'm not doing any work today. And like, that's great because a 9th grader will just smile and nod and still do no work. At least in the 8th grader, I know where to start, right? Like, I can work with that. I can't work with what we call active non-learning. So I taught 8th grade for a decade, absolutely loved it, but realized I'm more passionate about young people reaching their potential than I am about language arts. So started a nonprofit, and that brought me to this conversation with you today. The second thing you need to know about me is that I was raised in a family of 5 kids. So like many of you, have lots of humans. I am the middle of 5 kids, and all the rest are girls. So I have 4 sisters, 2 older, 2 younger. And if you want a childhood that changes a man, you want to talk to a guy who's been raised with 5 moms and then worked a decade in a middle school. And in between there, went to Seattle Pacific University, which is also 9/10 girls. So very interesting journey to get me to where I am. But my real passion for being here comes from the fact that I'm raising 3 kids of my own. And Cameron and I are going to be doing a lot of pointing today, so don't ignore that, or don't mind that. Owen in the middle, Henry on your right, and Hadley. They are 10, 8, and 5. They are a hoot. And I do want you to know a little bit about them because I'll reference them briefly throughout. But the basic concept here is my 3 children are just as unique as your children and grandchildren. They are just wired different. Like from the age of about, Ann and I have gone back, like from about 18 months to 2 years is where their uniqueness started to show, and it's only continued to blossom in all of its glory. Owen is the most organized type A firstborn kid you've ever met. He loves structure. I don't mean likes it or like needs it, like is enthralled with structure. Like at 2 was when he started organizing all the Tupperware by like size and shape, right? And that was like his happy place. Still is. You're like, Owen, will you organize the kitchen drawer? And he's like, yes. He'll spend the next 45 minutes just taking everything out and like, just amazing, right? That's incredible. But he struggles with transitions, right? Like, don't surprise Owen. He doesn't want that. He wants to know 6 months in advance, what am I doing for my birthday? Like, hey, buddy, it's February and that's October. It's like, I know, but I kind of need to know. Owen, so have you guys ever heard of Dude Perfect? Okay, all right, so Dude Perfect is a YouTube group. They're delightful if you need something to watch, but they run this thing called Overtime, and Overtime is where they basically run like a 40-minute show with all these little events in it. Owen plans those for his cousins. So when he goes and hangs out with his cousins, he comes with an itinerary, and he's like, first, we're going to get crafty, then we're going to do a cool, not cool, then we're going to do trick shots, and like, has it written down with like time stamps and like keeps track of who has won. Like, that's Owen, right? Like, organized. And now there's beautiful parts of that, and then there's parts from like, you are not going to make it to adulthood with how much tension you have as a 10-year-old, right? Like, you need to like breathe through your nose, out the mouth, buddy. Then you get Henry, and you could not get a more different person. Henry is the most present person you have ever met. Henry does not worry about tomorrow because tomorrow doesn't exist. Today, this moment, the only moment. Henry is the kid that you're like, Henry, we're going to get in the car. And he'll like run to the car first. Like, Henry, we were going to school. Go back and get your bag. And he'll go back and just disappear. And you'll wait like 4 minutes, car running, kids waiting. You're like, we're going to get stuck behind buses now. What's going on? Go back inside. Like, Henry, where are you? He's like, come over here. And you look, and he's on the couch. Like, what are you doing? He's like, reading. I'm like, uh-huh. And you can wait as long as you want. It will never be like, I was supposed to get my bag. Like, nope, just like reading. All right, if that was it, I'm going to keep reading, right? Like, you have to redirect him. Henry is so present, which is beautiful and amazing. I really think what Jesus wants from each of us, that ability to only be in this moment. He walked in my house with one shoe on. Henry, where's your other shoe? And he looked at his feet, and he looked at me, and was, I don't know. Not like I'm looking for it, but like, Dad, you can't change the past. The future hasn't happened yet. I'm a kid with one shoe. Love me as I am. And that's incredible, but my goodness, if he doesn't need like some kind of guide dog for his life to just keep him from meandering off. I'm really excited to see what his brain does as an adult. I'm like, I know people like you as adults, and they're very cool, smart people, but I wonder how they live to adulthood. And then there's Hadley. And Hadley is a human disco ball. Like, the party starts when Hadley shows up, and if there are no people, she just has one by herself. Like, she turned on a Taylor Swift record the other day. I work in my house now. I went around the corner and looked, and she was wearing a bell dress, eyes shut, arms dancing over her head. Party of one. That's all she needs. Hadley brings the party. She's always a 10 out of 10. You will never ask, Hadley, how's your dance? She's like, She's either complete joy and ecstasy or complete rage-a-hall. There is no in between. It can happen by the moment. Like, same table, same plate. Boom, screaming, crying, tears, just rage. And then completely fine. Daddy, I love you. Like, I don't know what to do with the emotional whiplash I just experienced. I'm kind of wondering if you're doing it just to mess with me. But like, that is Hadley. Her entire life is jazz hands, glitter, unicorns. That is Hadley. And it's amazing. And I'm excited to watch who she becomes. Now, all three of those are different. And when we talk about using tech, I want to use all the tech that makes them more of those things. I want Owen to be able to leverage his incredible organization and structure for his brain. I want Henry to continue to be incredibly present and empathetic and very funny. Henry likes puns. Someone talked about electrical tape today, and he made like some silly impression of like getting electrocuted, but didn't explain the joke. And it wasn't like in context. He just like did it and then like walked off. And I was like, that was weird. I think that was like a dad pun, but like in action. And he didn't need anyone to laugh. He just like did it for himself, right? Like, that's great. So if I can get you technology that allows you to keep being whatever that is, like, we'll do it. And then Hadley, if I can get her to connect with people and find joy that she takes to people, great. But what I don't want is Owen to try to use his structure to run his own life and just try to lock it down through organization. I don't want Henry to try to get so distracted that he quits finding joy in the people and the relationships God's put around him, because an infinite feed is going to eat someone like Henry alive, right? If there's no bottom to that page, that's going to be a problem for a kid like that. And Hadley can absolutely bring joy to people, but she can find joy in people and expect them to bring her purpose. So that's what we're talking about today. Please keep in mind that I'm applying this in real time. Just because I know a lot of research and a lot of really good information that will help you doesn't mean I can apply it perfectly. It's like expecting me to have perfect kids with tech is like expecting your pediatrician's kids to never get sick, right? So I know what needs to happen. I'm still applying it. If you ever meet my kids, you're like, but that kid's not perfect with tech. True, because he's still a human, being raised by me. But what we do have is some resources that are going to be super helpful. We're talking about three things today with making tech safe at home. The first is that there are two kinds of tech. So we're going to be talking about making those clear to you. The second then is, how can we know if it's healthy? I know what the tech is now, but is it even a problem? You're going to know before you leave today if there's actually a tech issue, or if you're just an old grandpa standing on the side of the road going, kids these days, right, get off my lawn. Back in my day, we had fun. Uphill both ways in the snow. There's some of it, right? Your kids have fun differently. That's okay. But sometimes there's actually a problem, and you'll know today. The third then is, what can you do to make it safe at home? So let's start it off with the two kinds of tech. We're going to go real quick. First is tool tech. The second is drool tech. It's not good and bad tech, but it's different by design, and that's what I want you to know about this. Tool tech is designed to help you create. It only does tasks you tell it to do. It has no ulterior motives, and it waits for you. Compare that to drool tech. Drool tech helps you consume. It will help you accomplish a goal, but it's going to want you to accomplish its goal as well. So you say, I want to go connect with friends. It's like, that's great, but did you ever know about this video you should probably watch too? Drool tech has the goal of taking your time, focus, and money. Tool tech does not. Which brings me to my first opportunity to be an 8th grade teacher. Turn to that elbow partner. I'm going to put an example on the board. Not yet. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm going to put an example on the board. You're going to turn to your neighbor and in under 10 seconds say whether you think it's tool or drool, just based off what I've said so far. Does it help you create or does it help you consume? First example, turn to your neighbor, nail gun, go. You're such a fast and smart group. Show me hands if you think it's tool tech. Show me hands if you think it's drool tech. Show me hands if you thought it was a trap. Okay, that's fair. All right, hands down. No, I'm really not trying to be tricky. Nail guns, the idea is it's an actual tool. I want you to get that concept. You're building something with it. It waits for you. As of now, no one's ever used a nail gun and had to go boop, boop, boop. You look at it and it's like you've used 500 nails, but for the low price of $4.99, we can get you another 150 nails, right? Like that's not what it does. It just, you use the nails. There's no microtransactions involved. And then when you're done, it just waits for you to come back. It doesn't send you notifications or give you levels for how many nails you've used, right? Like just as a tool. Trying to get that across. All right, step it up a little bit. What do you think about podcasts? Turn to your neighbor, go. Yeah, all right, already more conversation. 3, 2, 1. Raise your hand if you think it's tool tech. Raise your hand if you think it's drool tech. Okay, hands down. So this is tricky, right? We immediately stepped into this weird gray area because like, well, I don't know. I use him to be informed. Did he say informed as part of tool and drool? I did not. I said that tool tech helps you create and drool tech helps you consume. Drool tech is built around consumption, and you know if it has an algorithm tied to it, if it gives you content that you never asked for, and if it hides the podcast you always listen to 3 scrolls down, like Netflix, right? I watch the same show every day, and yet where is it? Not the first page, not the second page. Somewhere down here on page 3 is my scroll you might also like. Why? Because it's driven by an algorithm for consumption. The goal isn't show you what you want. The goal is get you to stay longer than you planned. It wants to take your time, your focus, meaning time is you wanted to stay for 1 episode, it's going to stay for 2. Autoplay, right? Many of us have deactivated that option because 10 seconds isn't long enough to find the remote, and we're powerless when it starts up again. We're like, I don't know. Looks like I'm here for yet another. You guys remember the show 24? 24 was the first one that really ate people's faces off, where they're like, 10 seconds to find the, oh no, what does happen to Jack Bauer? Right? Like, you use an actual 24-hour day to watch it all, completely passive after you click the first time. That is what we're trying to think of with podcasts. Most of the platforms are drool tech. Now, I will give you this. Me creating a podcast, that's tool tech. The microphone has no hooks built in. The recording app has no hooks built in. And the platform that I use on my end has no hooks for me to post more. There's no reward system getting me to do more content. But on the consumption side, you go to Spotify to listen to me. You go to Amazon. You go to wherever you listen, Audible. And there absolutely is drool tech on those ends. You're going to search me, and it's going to give you 20 other options as well. So keep that in mind. The platforms are drool tech, even when the content is beneficial. And that's what we're trying to get our heads around is, oh, it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's trying to take my time, my focus, and my money. And I want to be aware of that. Please use drool tech. But it can get tricky, which brings us to our third one, news feeds. Turn to your neighbor, tool or drool, go. Oh, there was like some begrudging answers in that one. Like, I know what he wants me to say, but I disagree. All right, so tool tech, raise your hand if you think it's tool tech. Raise your hand if you think it's drool tech. Okay, well, you at least knew the right answer. Again, it has the word feed in it. That's a key to us. There's literally an algorithm or an AI at this point for most of them that picks information, and it's not information that you need to be an informed citizen because it's personalized for you. You're not like a different kind of citizen from everyone else. It's information you're going to love or hate. When I published this book, the publisher said the worst thing you can get is a 3-star. I was like, why? He's like, 3 stars don't matter on the internet. He's like, you want people to 5-star or to 1-star? I'm like, what? Why would I want someone to 1-star? He's like, because the algorithm. You go on Amazon, you give me a 1-star review. This is the worst. It uses AI now to like figure out what you hated about me, and it puts that summary at the top. Then it pitches it to other people who've made similar comments about similar books, and I'll show up to those people because they will buy it in order to hate it, which is wild. But that's a major way the internet works right now, is to drive revenue. We have to drive clicks, which means we have to drive views, which means we have to drive dissension and anger and vitriol because it sells really well. Because you listen to something or read something and go, we were right, and you are more likely to go to social media and post that Be like, I'm the best one, we're the smartest. Or vice versa, they're the worst, I'm right again. And you will go post about that too. But you're getting different information, maybe even than your spouse using the same app from the same organization, because it's personalized to your search history and your spending habits. And my personal favorite, this is my favorite, like I love fighter planes. I don't always love how they're used, but I can't look away. They will base your feed on proximity to other users, meaning they have enough data crunching power now to look at your profile, compare it to all the profiles you hang out with, like in this room right now, and adjust the information you get accordingly. That's awesome, terrifying, right? Like that is incredible, the amount of information we can crunch nowadays, and horrible, but amazing. And that's what we need to know about feeds. Drool tech. Finally, computers. Turn to your neighbor, go. Oh, 3, 2, 1. If you think it's tool tech, let me see your hand. If you think it's drool tech, let me see your hand. Oh yeah, we're feeling this, right? All right, best example, because you're right, it can be both. Best example I've seen in my life is when I was teaching in the Puyallup School District. We went 1-to-1, so every kid got a laptop. And I was doing a delightful, I promise, unit on tone and mood. So tone is, how's the author sound? Mood is, how's it make you feel? But when you ask an 8th grader, you read this piece, how'd it make you feel? They'd be like, I don't know, hungry, kind of bored, right? Like, okay, not how do you feel, but how did they want you, like, what is the intended mood of this piece? They do not understand it. And so I designed a little unit that I'm very proud of that would start in January, right after Christmas. So leading up to Christmas, never warn them. They'd be reading like The Gift of the Magi, All That Matters is Love. It doesn't even matter if you have hair anymore for those nice berets your lover bought you. What's important is the emotion and the intent. And it's all warm and fuzzy. And they go to Christmas and they come back and I'm like, forget it. You're going to read To Build a Fire by Jack London. You know what To Build a Fire is about? Remember, these are kids that are showing up to school in the dark and leaving in the dark, and then usually coming to my wrestling practice right afterwards. So it's a pretty morbid season of life. To Build a Fire is about a dude freezing to death in the Yukon. And then we'd read The Little Matchstick Girl. You ever read that one? About a girl freezing to death in London. Don't worry, she meets her grandma. It's very sad. Then we read Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. Remember that one? Yeah, dude murders his roommate. Don't worry, we read The Monkey's Paw too, where the old couple lose their only loved child in a terrible accident because they're greedy. So it's just story after story after story after story of just bumming. And finally, some kids are going to be like, but why? It's so sad. I'm like, go on. Why do you think it's sad? They're like, because it's all so bad. I'm like, I read like, yeah, these stories should bum you out at some point. Like at some point, the darkness seeps into your soul and you actually go home bummed because of Sutherland's class. Mood. Now, in the middle of all of this, their 1-to-1 devices arrive. And now all the stories are on the computer. Go to the shared drive, go to Sutherland, go to 8th grade language arts, right? Like click on the folder that says, To Build a Fire, and they need to read that on their screen. And while they're doing this, the Microsoft devices we purchased send them a notification. It says, did you know this computer has Minecraft? And it's a clickable banner. They don't need to go find it. Just click the notification and Minecraft loads on your school computer. Needless to say, what do you think most 8th graders did in the middle of a bummer of a unit? Yeah, they clicked Minecraft. They're not dummies. They just are easily distractible. Computers can be both. They're just portals to tool or to drool tech. Now it comes down to, okay, what are we using and how are we using it? And it's perfectly fine to use drool tech. But does interruptions from Minecraft help deep learning? No. Do you think it blew up my tone mood unit? Yes, because all of a sudden we're getting like super bright colors and happy goals, all accomplishable from your own laptop when you were supposed to be getting bummed out for the purpose of learning. But, c'est la vie. We now need to think about that when we talk about our technology. So, here we go. I'm going to point this way. All right. To give you a very practical example to take back to your conversations, tool tech would be Microsoft Word. is a phenomenal example. Microsoft Word, none of you has ever, when going to bed at 11 p.m., set your $1,000 alarm clock on your bedstand and had it buzz, and you look at it, and there's a notification, and you click the banner, and it's Microsoft Word, and it says, I haven't seen you in a while. I thought maybe we could write a haiku. Now, with Copilot, maybe. This isn't a product suggestion, by the way. If you work at Microsoft, I have to be very careful. I just spoke in Seattle on Wednesday. I'm like, please don't tell your spouses to go home and produce this, right? I don't want this function in Word. Right now, Microsoft Word just helps you accomplish your goals. You could write on it once a day, once a month, once every 3 years, and it will not bother you or guilt you or demerit you in any way, shape, or form. It just waits. Compare that to our most common forms of drool tech. And you will see that there's quite a drift in focus. So social media, shows and movies, music, and video games are our most common drool tech. And yes, music, because unless you're listening to a record from the same band that plays in sequential order and stops when it's done, then you're engaging some kind of drool tech. It's suggesting music that you never wanted or played through that album, and it's just going to play another album, and sometimes that's amazing, and sometimes not so much. Like, you know, if you have a child who's ever used an Echo Dot, and it's like, play worship music, and then the next album, you're like, what are you listening to in there? Or like my nephews who said, play booty, because they think booties are funny. But you might not be surprised to know there's plenty of albums that have booty involved with them. And my sister was like, what are the words coming out of their room right now? Thanks, Echo Dot. So, and his 4 sisters, so I can say that. You don't know who that was. But this is our most common forms of drool tech, and I want to explain this a little bit. So, go to the next one, Cameron. The question is how. This used to be like 20 slides. My wife's like, I'll give you 5. You have 5 slides to explain this. What I want to do with drool tech is explain that this is not just magic technological voodoo, that somehow they're stealing your child's soul, but this is a very intentional practice that we can spot and we can recognize in our lives as either being good or bad, but at least knowing what it is. So it starts in 1938 with B.F. Skinner and something called operant conditioning. He wanted to train a rat to press a lever on command. Looks like that. And he's like, oh, I'll just feed it treats like I did that pigeon that I taught to play ping pong, except the rat expired on its interest in treats. So the light would turn on, the sound would go off, and the rat wouldn't press the lever because it didn't care anymore. So he electrified the floor. And rats aren't dumb. He realized after freaking out in this little box and bumping into the lever and the electricity goes off, he goes, you know what? I'm going to press that lever next time. Very quickly, without any electricity needed, the rat would press the lever every single time. So he realized, you know what? If you use a variable reward, which can include a punishment, you can punish as part of a reward. This is like getting a negative comment when you post on social media. That's still a reward. You still exist in the ether of the internet. There is no bad feedback, basically. So they will punish you and reward you, carrot and stick you into a behavior loop, which about 10 years later is what came to be known as the Hebbian theory of learning. That neurons that fire together wire together. Basically, the stuff you do a lot, you get good at. Doesn't mean it's good stuff. You could get really good at hitting the snooze button. You ever slept through your alarm for like 2 hours after like a week of hitting snooze every time? Your brain has been trained to just ignore that alarm. It's like, whatever. I'm not even going to tell your ears you're hearing it. Right? Like, you're just not going to hear that sound today because I've been trained to just ignore this noise. That's true in anything you repeat. The question is what we're getting good at worth being good at? Here's how it works with technology, though. The idea is neuroplasticity. So there was a season of life where we believed humans were just robots. Complete behavioralism in psychology. You just do what your DNA tells you to do. We now know that's not the case. Dr. Norman Doidge wrote a book called The Brain That Changes Itself. And if I were to condense it into like a single example, just right out of chapter 1, it's that your tongue can help you walk. Now, stick with me on this because this is wild. There's a lady that she gets surgery. The medication they give her for the surgery scorches her inner ear, the organ that's part of your body that tells you where you are in space. She gets crippling vertigo, can't work, can't drive, can't live alone. When she lays down, it feels like she's falling through the floor. The doctors go, we can't even repair it because you don't have the organ anymore. They're both completely scorched. Within 3 years, another doctor comes and says, hey, I've got an experimental procedure. Would you let me try it? She's like, sure, fine, whatever. Like, I can't do anything right now. I want to die. She's like, great. We're going to put a retainer in your mouth, and it has electronic stippling. So if you lean forward, it's going to give you a little electric buzz on the front of your tongue. You lean back, back of your tongue, left side, right side. She wears it for an hour. She freestands for 5 minutes before collapsing in a sudden onset of vertigo. Over the next 2 years, she trains with this doctor and becomes freestanding again without ever getting an inner ear. So there's a part of your body that's designed to help you know where you are when standing. It's why you get dizzy when you spin. That thing with the liquid in it is telling you you're still spinning. Takes a second to readjust. She doesn't have it. Her brain is telling her she's always spinning. 2 years of training with her tongue, and her brain is able to, through repeated stimulation, adapt to the point where she lives freely, drives, and works. That's with the tongue and 2 years of work. Think about what technology is doing with 5, 10, 20 years of work. We're getting very good at something, and our brains adapt to repeat stimuli. The concept of neuroplasticity is the concept that your brain is not rigid anymore. You're not just good at things or bad at them. Your repeated stimuli, trying again and again and again, makes you good or bad at it. Now, do you have an aptitude for something? Sure. Like Owen is going to probably be better at organization than Henry for the rest of his life, because Henry's me. I went into Christian Ministries, so Spirit 105.3. All right, so I got to go in there, and then we were recording some shorts, and partway through, one of the two people in the room were like, "It's interesting watching your brain work." Because they'd ask me for these 60-second snippets, and the way I do writing outlines, like I know how to do them. I taught it for a decade. But I can't use that. My brain doesn't start in point A and end at point B. My brain puts points A through double Z out there and then picks up a few of them and plays with them like blocks. And then eventually, when I say it, it comes out organized. But at no point, like if you look at my written notes, I just got an admin. She's like, "Can you just send me the notes for that podcast?" I'm like, "Ooh, I can." They're not going to help you. Like I could do it again off these notes, but like my brain works different. So I'm not saying everyone's brain can be great at everything. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying your brain adapts to your behavior. In order to be organized, it takes me more effort. And it takes me some really quirky learning things, because when you're ADD, organization just happens different, right? And just whatever else is wrong with my brain. I don't think it's just ADD. We adapt to our choices. Here's why that matters. Hit me, Cameron. Yeah, Nira Y'all wrote a book called Hooked. Read the subtitle on that one. How to Build Habit-Forming Products. It's not a cautionary tale. It's a how-to manual. Right out of the book comes this, and off his website. You have a trigger. It could be boredom. It could be a notification. That leads you to an action. Oh, come back to me. Yeah. That leads you to an action. That action could be something like post something, check something, read something, play something. That leads you to a variable reward. That could be as literal as like a loot drop in a video game, like you hit the llama enough and then something pops out in Fortnite. Or it could be a comment, or it could be that little swipe to refresh and that circle happened and then pow, new information we could have given you otherwise. But we wanted you to be more invested. Because once you've taken the action and got your variable reward, you're more likely to repeat that behavior in the future. The next time you see bad news, you're more likely to go back to social media with it. The next time you watch a video that makes you angry, you're more likely to click the next one. Because this is the way technology works when it comes to Drool Tech. We are being trained. It doesn't say, so you stayed an hour and that made it powerful. If you go and watch one Netflix show a night, you click one show, you watch for an hour and you're done. That was one rep of that. But if you watch YouTube Shorts or TikTok, average length of a video is 30 seconds, and you put in that same hour with 30-second videos, you got 120 reps in the same amount of time. And that is about reps. It's about how many times we can get you in the loop to click again, to click again, to click again. And the internet is baked into this, or excuse me, this is baked into the internet's process of how to direct your attention. All right? So this is how when we go, all right, what's the difference between Tool and Drool Tech? Tool Tech does not do this. This is a Drool Tech process. It's by design. There's an entire... It's a Stanford tech lab, actually, that he went to, that teaches people how to do this. So most of the major programs you use and most of the best video games use this. They're all built around engagement. Halo was the first one, 2001, was the first game to have a behavioral psychologist on the team. It's why if you've ever played Halo, and if you haven't, go ahead, compare it to Mario. The biggest differences are haptic feedback in the controller, not an accident. That's an engagement tool. No level transitions. You just walk across the map and a banner pops down. I played that game for 6 straight hours wondering when the first level ended. I was halfway through the game. There's no level transitions to tell you ended. Now select the next level. You just walk right on in. The visual and sound feedback. When you shoot someone and it hits, it makes a different splotch than if it hits their armor and bounces off. That is a user feedback piece, a variable reward that is to make you try again. You know that hit failed, so try one more time. Those are powerful engagement tools that are designed. It's not just a good game anymore. It's a behavioral loop producer, and we want to know that because guess what? If you're going to fight about technology, it's probably not Microsoft Word. Right? There's not a lot of you who are like, 5 minutes till dinner, and your kid's been like, I need 10. This paragraph is so good. You hear a lot of, I can't pause this game, Mom, which they can't. They want me to tell you that. They can't pause the game. We can talk about that in a minute if you want. All right, go, Cameron. To give you a very clear example, what are we looking for in Drool Tech? These all came out of the movie The Social Dilemma. You no longer need to watch it because it really was just trying to scare people into caring. It came out in like 2020, and 18 months later, people are like, we get it. We didn't believe it, but we get it now. What can we do? I know that because in 2019, I was getting made fun of for saying these words, and now people invite me without ever having heard me talk. They're just like, whatever, we saw your face on the internet. Fly out and talk to us. I'm like, you sure? I literally had a talk last week with North Carolina. I was like, so we did this 45-minute talk with your staff. Do you guys want to talk about cost? And literally the head pastor goes, no, because I'm really excited about this, and I don't want to get sad. Like, so you just want me to ship you an invoice? They're like, yeah, just do it. Like, that's where we're at, right? Like, such a swing in 5 years. So you don't need to watch this, but no, it's a thing. It's a good thing to reference. Here's what they walk through. Basically, a guy interviews, the Center for Humane Tech is their organization that put this on, and he interviews a bunch of people to help make the tech. Like the guy that invented the like button. He's on there, and he's like, yeah, we knew it'd be good, but like, we didn't know it'd be this good. Like, oops. Here's some of the examples. Notifications. So notifications are basically tech companies assuming you're dumb. They're like, we know you have the same 24 hours as everyone else, but we don't trust you to spend it. So did you know you had a friend from 20 years ago that you haven't talked to who just had a birthday? You should probably reach out. Right? That's what notifications do. They can't trust you to run your own time. We're going to run it for you. Likes. So I mentioned this already from Facebook. Facebook invented this. By 2011, we then had a weight value for things that never before in human history had a way to weigh against one another. For example, pictures of food. Never before has there been a weight value for that. And yet, if I take a picture of my dinner and you take a picture of your dinner, you get 50 likes and I get 5, you are literally 10 times more valuable than me in terms of dinner pictures. Which brings us to then followers. Oh no, I'll get to followers. Swipe to refresh. That was the one. This is based off a slot machine. They're like, how does slot machines help people enter flow? Flow is that state of intense focus. It happens to you like when you're doing something you love. You're working on a car, you're on a bike ride, you're hanging out with your kids, you're watching a movie, you're sewing something, but you're in flow, and all of a sudden you look up and like the sun's in a different spot in the sky. You're like, how did I get here? That's flow. Slot machines do it. You will get people. There's research done on people who gain gambling addictions, which is a trained behavior, by the way. You can train yourself to be addicted to gambling. It's wild. You can swipe to refresh. It's the same process. You pull down, it thinks for a minute, and then your variable reward is new information. You do this a lot right before bed. You're down, you're going to do the right thing. You're going to leave your phone downstairs. Your kids are upstairs brushing their teeth. You can hear them. You don't want to be up there for like 3 more minutes. You could read scripture, but you don't. Instead, you just swipe one more time. And 8 minutes later, you look up and you're like, what was I doing right now? Why are the children screaming, right? It's that one last little gasp to get you to invest a little more time, because it's that valuable for them. Or if you're like me and you don't have social media on your phone, you literally just check the weather app. It's sad, but it's true. I will check the weather app before memorizing scripture sometimes, which is a hard issue for me. It's not the weather app's fault, because the weather app is not Drool Tech. It couldn't be more tool techy, but that's just where I'm at in life. Infinite scroll. The infinite scroll is concerning because never in human history have we ever had something endless. Think about it. Human history, all the books end, all the wars end, all the empires end, all the relationships end. Everything has an end. At least there's a page you have to turn. Not with infinite scroll. You can just go forever. And at some point, AI will just start making stuff up. Like, you're still here? Fine. You'll definitely believe this. Bowflexes can make you fly. So, next is feeds. We've talked about feeds ad nauseum. Just know that they're selecting stuff for you you didn't ask for. Points and rewards. Duolingo is great at this. It's a wonderful way to learn a language. So this is tool techie piece, but it is absolutely core example Drool Tech, where they are rewarding you to get up, and if you do enough studying, you can get enough points to make it to the next level. But if you don't, and you're in that bottom third, demerit. Sorry, try better next month. It's just, or next week, I guess. That is points rewards. They're very powerful motivators, and they can be very good. I use an exercise app that has points and rewards in it. And a really sad, if you really bomb one, it doesn't even ask you why. So normally it'll say like, how hard was that? It'll just literally be like, why were you so bad? It's like, I get it. I understand. I'll do better. But that's points and rewards. Can you use Drool Tech to motivate you in something you want to do? Yes. It's very good at behavior modification. You want to get fit. You want to learn a language. You want to read your Bible every day. Drool Tech can help you do that. But just keep in mind, you're not just learning the skill. There's also it's like why some of us can't work out without a really mean coach, right? We got trained that we need someone screaming at us. And you're literally like, I just can't get out of bed in the morning if I don't know someone's going to be mad at me. Like, that's why trainers are a thing, all right? So, points and rewards. Fear of missing out. This is your young people. When they say, I want a smartphone, they mean I want social media. What they really mean is I know all my friends are having fun, and I know they're all talking about me. And social media does nothing to dissuade that. They go, no, that's true. They are, and you should probably be on there because you're definitely missing out, and they would make fun of you a lot less if you were there. So, hit me, Cameron. My final example to drive this home would be YouTube, because I don't want this to sound like a nefarious thing that only the bad people use. We all use YouTube. I have content on YouTube. YouTube is phenomenal at Drool Tech. YouTube has 2.5 billion monthly users. So if they were able to get 1 minute out of 10% of their users, so you have 250 billion people in a month using it, and if just 10% stayed for 60 seconds, just 1 minute, they would gain 173,000 additional days of viewing. Now, here's what that means. That's enough time to watch all 10 seasons of Friends 47,000 times. And to put that in context, it takes 5 days and 6 hours to watch all 10 seasons of Friends. So if you watched it straight through, didn't sleep, just 5.5 straight days, you took 1 day and 18 hours to sleep, eat, and hang out, rinsed and repeated, it would take you 129 years to gain what YouTube does with 1 minute from 10%. The troubling thing is that the last time YouTube gave us that number was 2016. Everyone panicked because 70% of YouTube viewers were clicking on an additional video from the suggestion bar. That was 2016. They've gotten quite a bit better since then. I fall prey to this all the time. I'll go on trying to look for something that is real. I'm like, oh yeah, I watched that guy's talk. Where did that come from? I got sucked into a video titled, and I quote, "The best cyclists don't ride bikes." And I'm like, go on. I literally checked my clock and I was like, I've got 15 minutes. You got me. Go. Turns out the America's Cup, the yacht that the winning team has been using, is powered by 8 professional cyclists in recumbent bikes underneath. 500 watts for an hour. Go to the YMCA and try to do 500 watts. These people are holding 500 watts in a non-air conditioned black boat. 8 of them for an hour. It's incredible. Go watch it. It's amazing. It'll make you question your existence. You'll be like, why? Why was pain made? Like the amount of suffering these people can do. That's a lot of power coming out of Drool Tech. It's the reason they're part of $1 trillion company. Now, where are we headed with all this? Why does it matter? You can be convinced you need something you didn't want. This is the concern. Since we know neuroplasticity is a thing, anyone who can form your choices is also forming your behavior. To the point where they can convince you you need it and you didn't even want it. Best example I've got for you, Snapchat. Ask anyone who's used Snapchat. This is a direct messaging app, meaning it's Instagram messaging, but with a feature that nobody asked for. Exactly 0 people were using Instagram direct messages and going, oh, I love being able to just text my friends right here and I don't have to leave. I wish that they had a timer, that when I text my friend and they text me back, they just started a 24-hour clock. And then they kept track of how many days in a row we messaged each other, so we kind of feel like we have to message one another. And then if we ever miss a day, our streak expires and so does our friendship. Could someone make that feature? And Snapchat was like, we've got you. We're going to actually do one better. Not only are we going to create Snap streaks where you message me and I message you, and now we have a streak of 1, but I'm going to make it so that when the other person reads your message, and doesn't respond right away, it leaves you on red. There's a little red icon that pops up that says, this person hates you. Just wanted you to know. And it is absolutely incredibly manipulative, but don't worry, there's more. I had a young lady in Kent tell me that she stole from her grandparents. I'm like, go on, I don't understand what you're saying. She's like, yeah, well, Snapchat. She's like, I had a streak of 1.5 years with a friend. I missed it one day because she didn't wake up in the middle of the night to keep the streak alive. But the next day, Snapchat sent her a message that said, psst, nobody has to know. Just pay us this nominal fee and we'll give you your streak back. So you have minors who are tricked into a behavioral loop with fear of their friends to the point where they are willing to steal from the people who feed and house them to make a friend not be mad at them, which makes you wonder, how good is this friend? That you're so scared of her that you can't explain, I slept. Instead, you steal from grandma to pay off a ransom to Snapchat. Which at the end of the day, if you ask any Snapchat user, have you ever kept Snap streaks alive when you should have been eating, when you should have been studying, should have been sleeping, and should have been talking to others? Everyone will say yes. Junior high, high school, college-age humans, they'll all say, yeah, I've done that. That's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You need food and sleep to survive. And yet you're giving them up to get a streak, a feature you never asked for. You need human connection. Viktor Frankl wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning. He lived through 3 concentration camps. He said there's 3 ways people would die in a concentration camp: brutality, starvation, and giving up. They wouldn't see a reason in today and a purpose for tomorrow. He said you notice them because they'd start smoking their cigarettes. Cigarettes are the currency of a concentration camp. You don't smoke your currency unless you don't believe you're going to need it. He said within 48 hours, every single time, those people would die because they've given up a reason for tomorrow. You have a kid who's giving up on their education to get to a function they never asked for. We have a concerning loop happening. Do you know what it's called when you give up what you need to get to what you want? Addiction. It's the textbook definition of an addiction. When you give up what you need for survival to get stuff you want, that's an addiction. My buddy Cameron Burke runs Absolute Ministries out of Bonnie Lake, Idaho and Montana, and they've grown. But Bonnie Lake was the original one. And he said, that's the number one thing we explain to our people because I don't really have a problem. Like, here's the deal. You do. They work with Teen Challenge and an addiction recovery clinic. And the number one thing they have to help people see is like when you're giving up what you need or what your family needs to get to something that's optional, that's a concern, and that is what Snapchat is training into the minds of our youth. So if your kid currently uses Snapchat, you're going to want to keep an eye on it, and next we're going to talk about how to know if it's a problem. But first, it's not just kids. How many times does an adult check his or her phone in a day on average? Turn to your neighbor and say, go. Elbow partner. All right, Cameron, hit that number for me. 350. This isn't how many times you check your clock. This is how many times you log in. So I did this the other day with my wife. You can use screen time on an iPhone to figure out how much time you spend, and then you can also see what you've used. If you click see more, it'll break it down by the app. And I was all cocky because I had only spent 40 minutes and she was like 3 hours. Like, I'm crushing it. And then she's like, yeah, but scroll down. I had checked my phone 120 times in 40 minutes of use. That means I am compulsively checking my phone, just like absent-mindedly. If you don't know if you do this, try this with me. Move your favorite app to a different part of your phone. Like just put it in a different folder. And you will open your phone, click on randomly wherever you normally are used to, and you'll just open some app. And you'll be like, wait, what am I doing? Who am I? Right? Like it'll snap you out of it because you are in a trained loop. You don't even notice how many times. I could not recall 120 phone checks. And yet I did. Some of it drool tech, right? Some of it trained, but a lot of it heart check, where I'm using tool tech wrongly. So it's not just drool tech that we can misuse. But this is important because with young people, it's even worse. Young people in screens, they're averaging 8.5 hours a day of drool tech. This compiles, so if you use TikTok while watching YouTube videos, that's double time, okay? So just because of the amount of stimulation you're getting. So Twenge et al. Wrote 2017. She's also referenced in The Anxious Generation and therefore in my book as well because she's at San Diego State and does a great job on this. She proves that starting at 2 hours a day, the likelihood of depression and suicidal ideation, meaning they start thinking about taking their own life, increases 20%, 2 hours a day of Drool Tech. At 5 hours a day, it crosses 60%, meaning you take a kid who has no issues, you put them on Drool Tech for 5 hours a day, and they're going to be 60% more likely than their peers to have depression, not just prolonged bouts of sadness and loneliness. We'll talk about that in a moment, but depression and suicidal ideation. And we're averaging 8.5 hours a day, which would explain why the CDC has told us that 2/3 of teenage girls in the United States said they experienced prolonged bouts of sadness and loneliness in the prior year. 2/3, 1/3 had considered taking their own life. 1 in 3 teenage girls. That's concerning when we know one of the causes of it. This is why I get so pumped when districts this year, Sumner School District, Cascade Christian, Kings, Pacific Christian, Pacific Christian, Sound Christian Academy, Tacoma Christian, are all going, Gig Harbor did it, all phone free in schools. Saying, hey, we can't manage your home and we're not your parents, but we are your teachers. And we know this is a net loss for the classroom now. So we are going to, which brings us to our next point, actually. We are going to reduce, we know these devices reduce attention span, lower academic success, and cause what they call brain drain. That's an actual study term for it. Brain drain is where they realize your brain has to buffer the desire to look at the phone. So you don't have 100% of your attention. You have, I'm making up a number, 90% of your attention. And the other 10% is like, don't look at your phone, don't look at your phone, don't look at your phone, don't look at your phone. It's the same thing that happens to you when a notification pops up on your work computer. Where you're like working, like new email. You're like, ooh, email. I would rather do that for sure. Right? That little distraction piece takes focus. Have you ever tried to not click on that? It's like a voice is screaming in the back of your brain. You're like, click on it! You're like, I can't even remember what I was trying to do right now. Like, where was I? Because there's just this voice yelling at you to do something that you weren't just doing and you didn't want to do. That's brain drain. You're no longer 100% invested in this. You're some smaller fraction of it. That's the concern with Drool Tech and our kids. And that's the reason smartphones are leaving the school. So I know that that's controversial. I don't know what's the Bethel School District done? Are they phone free in the high school? Anyone here go to the Bethel School District? Okay, all right. I have not heard about them, but I'm intrigued. The Puyallup School District is going school by school, which is very interesting. So they're not doing like a universal, like, this is our plan. They're going like piecemeals. Like some junior highs are, but then other junior highs are like, you can't study The Anxious Generation for that book study you wanted to do. I'm hoping they get on the right page here soon. If you have any contact with the Puyallup School District, give them that book. Next, the question is, why do we care? And the reason we care is they're different by design. We care about the design. The tech is coming with intent for our children. We know that too much of that behavioral hook design is bad for them. So we as loving parents want to just keep it in mind. All tech is not the same. It doesn't matter that it just plugs into a wall. It doesn't matter that it just has a screen. It doesn't even matter that it's fun or engaging. The concern is some of it is built to be unhealthy. Because the less healthy you are, this is Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, is famous or infamous for saying competition isn't the other streaming service. Competition is sleep. We know you're committed to work. We know you're committed to family. The only place we can increase our wedge is by stealing your sleep. And that's our job. Well, sleep is important for survival. So when you have a company CEO saying our job is to make you less healthy to help our bottom line, that's a good summary of where we're at right now with Drool Tech. So keep it in mind. It's not all bad, but it can be a little nefarious at times because it doesn't actually like you. Which brings us to your first chance to turn to your neighbor. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. You're going to turn to your elbow partner and discuss 2 things. First, which tech does your family use well? It could be Tool or Drool, but what are you like? You know what? We are really nailing. This thing is a boon for our family. And which one causes the most conflict? The thing you're just always having to talk about, even if it's not a fight, it's just irritating because it comes up all the time, and you or your child, one of you, is slipping off the ledge of sanity in pursuit of it or in defending against it. Turn to your neighbor, 3 minutes, go. 30 seconds. All right. So, if you have any questions, jot them down. We now know that there are two kinds of tech, and I spent all that time making sure we're clear on them because we need to understand that they're designed differently so that when we talk with our young people, that is our talking point. It's not just, I don't like it. It's not simply, yeah, but I don't like who you are on it. It's not just that it's different. It's that, hey, you know what? This is literally taking your attention, and I've noticed something about that with you, and I want that to be my talking point. You can do this with 5- and 6-year-olds. You can do this with 12-year-olds and 16-year-olds. It works across age spectrums. So make sure that that's the mindset behind this. It's not, I knew that was Drool Tech, and we'll never have it in our house. That's certainly one way to roll, but at the end of the day, it's more important to raise young people who can spot it and who know their limits with it. When we talk about raising healthy adults, we are not raising safe children. And that's very important when we get to this next part because we want our children to be safe, yes. But risk is an important part of growing. And there will be risks we allow. There are some risks you're like, you know what, it's just too far and it's going to be between you and God when you grow up. And we'll talk about that here with this reset piece. But with Tool and Drool, two types of tech, they're very different and they're talking about how they're designed and therefore how they train us. So now, how do we know if it's a problem though? We call this a reset. And a reset is an acronym that you can apply to any technology in your life and even outside of technology, but it works really, really well. The question we're asking is, does this tech impede? Does it get in the way of my, and I'll walk through them all, but I'll go one at a time in terms of slides. Relationships and responsibilities, emotions, sleep, enjoyment, and time. These are the 5 areas. If you look at research, if you look at practice, if you have someone in your own life with technology issues, these 5 will show whether or not it's healthy. We'll start with relationships and responsibilities. What we're trying to address here is, does tech get in the way of the things you've committed to and the people you're committed to? So relationship, look at, does this tech get in the way of how you treat your parents, how you treat your siblings, how you treat your friends? If there's a game your child plays, and you go, hey, when you play that game, you get rude to your sister. When you are on that social media platform, you're mean to your friends. When you listen to that music, you are emotionally withdrawn from the relationships you're committed to. You come to dinner, but you don't come to dinner, right? Your body is here, but your brain is somewhere else. That's a talking point. As a loving, concerned adult, a parent in this kid's life, you can go to him and say, hey, I've noticed that tech seems to be getting in the way of how awesome you are. What do you think? Always ask what they think. They might say, I think you're crazy, and be like, interesting feedback. What evidence do you have of that? I want you to ask the follow-up on that. Don't just freak out. Freaking out never helps you. You can always win by just getting louder and madder, but it doesn't actually help anything. It doesn't raise a young adult who knows how to love God and use tech. It just makes them sneaky so you don't get mad at them. So relationships is our first piece. We're looking for, does this get in the way? If it doesn't, you now have a talking point to praise. It's okay to go to your child and say, I've noticed you use your social media in a way that builds your friendships. That's really cool. Go ahead. I've noticed you play video games because you like life, right? You have friends over, you play games, and then you go play the rest of life. Very cool. That's not the only place your friends exist. I'm going to take a side note on that right now. There are some people who are like, but my kid has to play this game because all his friends play this game. Okay. I'm going to challenge you on that. If your child only has friends through that game, there's a good chance they're not friends, they're squad members. And there's a good chance your child is not a friend, but a convenience. And the downside of being convenient, accessible whenever I need you to be a part of my team, is you also become disposable. So friends need to have equal value, meaning I see you as of equal worth to me. You cannot have a friendship that doesn't have equal value. You must have that as a foundational layer. Then you have to have a shared real-world experience, and you have to be a priority. not a central priority where this person's life revolves around you, but like, oh, when picking between being alone in my room or being with this person, I would like to be with this person because they are a priority to me. I say no to things to say yes to this person. That's a friend. We as adults need to reflect on that. Be like, yeah, that person's not a friend at all. We're just whatever. We are co-interested in the same topic. But friendship is important. You can have a friendship in video games, but it needs to be extend beyond video games. So in relationships, you go, hey, I've noticed you're having a bad day and you don't have any friends to go to because they all exist on video games. And when you go and tell them in your video game you're having a bad day, they're like, they don't care. They just want to play more Siege. So do people still play Siege? Is that still a thing? Or whatever the thing is kids are playing these days. Is Siege dead? Did Siege die? Oh, no. It's tragic. So with that, we have relationships responsibilities. We want to talk with our children about that. Then we want to move on to their emotions. So we go, all right, does tech get in the way of your emotions? I don't mean that you feel sad when we had to skip your video games to go to sister's swim meet. I mean you need this to be okay. You've seen this in people. Not just that they enjoy the thing, but when the thing isn't there, they don't have the slow drip of lo-fi through the AirPod. Airbud is a dog in a movie, so it's an AirPod. All right. It came out when I was in teaching middle school, and I've never gotten the product name right. But if you have to have that slow drip music, and there's some kids I feel anxious if I don't constantly have music in. Note that. I have a young man who has to constantly be on a Discord chat. He wakes up, and the friends are talking, and he goes out into life, and the friends are talking. It's very Fahrenheit 451-ish with the seashells. It's very dystopian. But that's a talking point. Say, hey, I've noticed you seem to need this to calibrate. It's called coping. It's perfectly reasonable. We all do it. I use chocolate chip cookies. I wish I was kidding. But my feelings are delicious, and chocolate chip cookies are the way I eat them. So with that, young people will use technology to be okay, and you want to call it out. And be like, hey, I've noticed when you don't get video games, life isn't worth living. What's going on? I've noticed that when you don't get that social media time, you are so anxious about what's happening online that you can't enjoy vacation. What's going on, right? Those are your talking points as a caring adult, because it's not always the technology that's causing it. I had two young men, both problems with video games, but one young man was literally just video games. He needed 30 days away. That's what Anna Lembke, author of Dopamine Nation, I think I referenced her on the back of that page. I hope I did. She references that it's 30 days is how long it takes to reset your brain. If you're overstimulated and you can't find joy in the rate of real life, 30 days away will help you. The first 2 weeks are going to stink, and there's no way to make it better. It's just going to be rough because you're used to life up here, and the short version is your brain basically just takes players out of the game because it's getting overstimulated. So it just starts pulling people that's it. We're getting too much inflow. Come out of the game, come out of the game, to the point where you're left with so few neural receptors for dopamine that your brain can't feel happy at the pace of real life. So it takes 2 weeks for your brain to be all right, maybe it's getting better. We'll start sending some folks back in, and then your kid will come back to you. The reason we bring that up is the one young boy was gaming, and gaming was the problem. He was just overstimulated. He needed 30 days away. The other young man was overstimulated, but that wasn't his main problem. Main problem was his dad had just moved home. Now, he was a 9th grader. I taught as an 8th grader. I got called into the counselor meeting, which is unusual, but we had a good relationship through Young Life. And through this, I asked him to unlock his phone for me. He gave me his phone, and I was like, what are all these folders? And he's like, video games. I'm like, how many? He's like, 500. And I was like, that's a lot of games. That seems like too many games. You're not playing 500 games. What's happening here? Well, it turns out his dad just moved home. 9th grader. His dad had left when he was 2. Dad moved home with grandma and grandpa, living out of the garage with his girlfriend and his dog, and is slinging dope to the neighbor kids. And this young man doesn't have and by the way, demands on being called dad. And we have a 9th grader who does not have the emotional maturity to be like, I'm mad. He's not my dad. And I refuse to deal with this stranger who's stepping into my life and blowing it up, right? So what does he do? He just games 16 hours a day and fails 4 out of 6 classes. If you pull the video games away from that kid, does he magically get better? No, he's just going to find something else to medicate with, right? And it'll probably be a lot more destructive than video games. At least video games keep him around the people he's with. So coping is natural, but it's not good. It's not sustainable. So we had to get him professional care and intervention which is great because districts are mandated reporters and we get to do that stuff. And that's what we get to do as loving parents, is we get to step into our kids' lives and say, yes, we love you too much to let this go on. I'm not mad at you. I'm not shaming you. I'm not blaming you. And this isn't to build character, right? This might be painful, but that's not the point. It's just the process. The point is I care about you and I need to do something healthy, which brings us to sleep. If it impacts sleep, it's a problem. And if they have drool tech in the bedroom, it's a problem. Nobody needs drool tech in the bedroom. Even that $1,000 smartphone alarm clock you've got. You don't need that. You actually need this. So they're not a sponsor, but it's the one I use. My wife and I each have one. It runs on 2 AAA batteries. Go nuts. It's not perfect, but it's fine. You tap it to snooze. You flip it over to turn it off. I used it this morning to show up here. And look, I made it. And my alarm clock was, or my, not alarm clock, my smartphone was downstairs the whole time. So really, though, you do want something that's just an analog alarm clock, and alarm clocks are harder to find than you would think. So that actually took me a long time to find one I didn't hate. But here's a little bit on sleep. We'll just run through these real quick. The first research, Matthew Walker's the first 2. Sleep impacts intelligence, emotions, learning, memory, health, your immune system. There's actually research that says it impacts your athleticism. They did 2 groups. One slept under 5, one slept over 9. They did the same workout and ate the same number of calories. So they literally were just like, great, we're going to allow the only controlled variable to be sleep. At the end of, I want to say it was 2 months, they both lost the same amount of weight, but the sub 5 hours of sleep group lost only muscle. They retained the exact same amount of body fat, but they lost the same amount of weight as their counterparts who gained muscle but burned body fat. Sleep. Triathletes call this sleep hygiene. That you actually have to get sleep as part of your preparation for the training you're doing. If you think in terms of exercise, you put a sponge under flowing water, at some point it's just full. That's the training stress. You go do a workout, your body takes on stress. You run, you swim, you lift. Your body takes on stress, and at some point the sponge is full. You can't use it anymore. The only thing you can do now is sleep. And if you refuse, your body's like, all right, survival mode it is. Retain all the fat you can because you're going to die soon, and like start burning muscle to just keep the ship alive. That's the concern when it comes to young people. So if you want to talk to your child about it, just say, I need you to sleep more for them gains. Okay? That'll be the language you use. The next then is that it can actually cause panic attacks. These are real. If you have a young person who's anxious, yes, concerned about the tech and their other influences, but sleep is going to be a big one. Lack of sleep is linked with depression and suicide. Again, pointing back to that 1 in 3 teenage girls in the United States idea. And that we don't adapt to it. I like that last part. That idea that sleep puts a lien on our body or on our life. That you don't just get the opportunity to tough it out. It's not, you can't adapt to a lack of sleep. Your brain eventually just shuts off with your eyes open. And this is long-distance trucking, right? There's reasons we have rules now along how long you can drive, because you will feel like you can make it. And your brain's like, yeah, no, you can't. So instead of dying, we're going to go to sleep, which might make us die. But like, we're going to choose this one over the other one, and you don't get a choice in that. Your eyes are open. The person next to you can't tell you're asleep, but your brain is off. Micro sleeps. A loss of 1 hour of sleep, this needs some explanation, but loss of 1 hour of sleep is equivalent to 2 years of academic learning. So the group who most famously cites this is Merriman and Bronson, who wrote Nurture Shock. They're citing another study, so this was an original study from them. But the premise is they put little sleeper, what are they, like wristbands? But basically they could tell from heart rate and movement when children slept. And they followed them, and then they broke them down into 30-minute increments based on academic ability. And they said starting at 5 days, this effect took place. So if you have 5 days of bad sleep, that child is now learning at 2 years lower, their retention and their recall. So the ability to learn new facts and their ability to produce the facts they already know and apply them is 2 grades lower. My 5th grade son would operate as a 3rd grader, which might still be better than your average bear for some kids, but that's not the best for them. The goal isn't just don't be terrible. The goal is do your best. And if you are leaving sleep on the table, if there's drool tech in the bedroom, you're not doing your best. Your sleep is getting interrupted if for no other reason than that brain drain function. You're trying to fall asleep while not thinking about the tech in your room. I will say this goes away immediately upon sleeping again. And yes, some of us sports families are like, we're so good, we don't have drool tech in the bedroom. But my son played Cal Ripken this year, and some games went until 10 p.m. as a fourth grader. And my wife and I are having to look at each other and be like, this is a pretty serious trade-off. For 3 months a year, this kid is going to be operating in a sleep deficit? Like, maybe we need to talk about just telling the coaches up front, we're not going to go to certain games. Like, we're still actively processing it because Owen is very athletic and he loves sports. Weird, right? Baseball and Owen. No one saw that coming. You mean an entire rule around math and weighting? Yes. That's fantastic. And when it comes to pitching, he's like Rain Man. Like, Owen, just pitch right here. And he's like, how many times? All of them done. Like, great. He's the only kid I've ever thought about teaching a slider to, because I'm like, I don't know. Like, you're actually weirdly good at this. Should we teach you a slider as a 10-year-old? Maybe. The point, though, is the sleep. I got distracted. Sorry. The point is the sleep is so important. Go ahead. Next slide, Cameron. Save me. Enjoyment. Enjoyment isn't just do they like it. The point is what they love, the things that they're naturally passionate about. Is it wilting? Because they're now over-engaged in some kind of technology. So they used to love doing art, and now all they do is watch other people draw art. They used to love building things for themselves. Now all they do is watch other people build things, right? They just go online and endlessly feed, and they don't even engage in the passions they used to have. That's what we're looking for. Not just, I like this video game, or enjoy social media, or these movies are really fun, but are like, this is the only thing that brings me enjoyment. And we'll have fun as long as it's involving this, but everything underneath it wilts because it's just eclipsed by this new passion. That's what we're looking for in this, and that's a talking point. Hey, I've noticed you don't really enjoy whatever thing used to bring you tons of joy. Sometimes kids just grow up, and that's okay. They used to like a sport, and they've moved on to a different thing, but we're not worried about that. We're worried about a pivoting of their enjoyment. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's not just, hey, I really enjoy this game, and it's lots of fun. I'd like to play it again. It's, this is the only thing that brings me happiness, and I must have it. You're going to see it come out in emotions and in sleep and in other areas too. Finally, it's time. And time is just, can they be content? Your family made some expectations. You said 30 minutes. Can they be fine with 30 minutes? Or is it always a battle? And if it's always a battle, that's your talking point. Hey, I've noticed. We agreed on 30 minutes, and it's not enough. And they might go, well, I can't pause it, and it takes me 10 minutes to log in. Okay, maybe we make an agreement as a family. As you get a 10-minute timer to set up. You get 40 minutes now, and then 30 minutes to play. All right. Or maybe you go, so what? Pick a different game that doesn't require all the setup. Okay. Like with your kids, by the way, on time, like, I'm halfway done. They really do get penalized. If they care about Fortnite and they're trying to get ranked up in Fortnite to play better opponents and you make them quit, they get a demerit for that. Not only does their team hate them, but they actually get a physical rank knock for dropping out of a game partway through, because everyone would do that if they were losing. They just unplug their internet and be like, oh, weird. Plug back in. I haven't lost any games in 3 years. So there's a system for penalizing you for leaving a game partway through. That's real. If your child doesn't seem to be able to manage that, and it's constantly a point of conflict, that game might be too much. Cool idea, poor application for your child. That's reasonable to say, all right? So we have a reset. Yeah. And what I want you to do is not think about your child's reset, because I know you were building a whole argument against them. I want you to grade yourself. So a fist to 5, you're going to start by turning to your neighbor, talking about how you're doing, and then I'm going to ask you to just show me right in front of you. Fist is a 0, 5. This is the areas of your life that are impeded by technology. So reset, relationships, responsibilities, emotion, sleep, enjoyment, time. You'd be a 5 if all 5 areas have some kind of obstacle because of tech. You'd be a 1 if only 1 is 0 is 0. All right. So turn to your neighbor, tell them what you are, talk it out. I'm going to only give you 2 minutes this time because I want to make sure we get enough time on the making tech safe part. Go. 30 seconds. All right. Sorry, that wasn't 30 seconds. I said 30 seconds. I waited like 5. I'll wait. Okay. For reals now. So we have 2 options for how to proceed. I just checked our time. I want to make sure that I respect yours. I know some of you have kiddos in the back. So would you give me I can go through 5 fixes, which I'll just go through the first one if we did this. And it's part of how to make tech safe at home. It's like the how do we handle it if it's unhealthy. Or we can jump straight to the making tech safe at home, and Cameron will scramble to try to find the right slide. So the only thing would be if we get through to the making tech safe at home, we have time for Q&A. And if I go through the 5 fixes, specifically beneficial stress, we may not have as much time. Give me a thumbs up if you'd like to make it to Q&A. If you have like things you want to make sure that we can answer, there were enough people. All right. So Cameron, I'll explain this. You don't have to actually. Would you go to the yes? Till 12 when? 15, 1-5. That's delicious. Because we did start a couple minutes late, and that's what I'm trying to. Let's do it. Cameron, don't find that next slide. We'll just go right into the beneficial stress. All right. Yes. More time to say words. Here's the deal. If you go to that next slide. The question is, what do we do if there's a problem? So I have a reset. I know I can remove the unhealthy tech, but what do I do now instead? Right? So we want to do the Matthew 5 thing where Jesus says if there's something that causes you to sin, your right eye, your right hand, you cut it off, you gouge it out. This thing becomes expendable because it's bringing sin, which always brings death. You don't just manage your death. This is important because in my life, and I'm going to have to give you the short version. Your kids will get the longer version tomorrow if they're in youth. But I was a 5 out of 5 on my reset. I had promised I would ask you. So what did you come up with? Show me right in front of you, fist of 5. No one else sees, just right between you and me, right in front of your torso. How many areas of your life are impeded by your tech? Okay, thank you. Very honest, hands down. Yeah, I don't see many zeros except with this face. The you don't know me face. Who are you to ask me? My spouse is next to me. But I was a 5 out of 5. And the short version is I played video games to be okay. I didn't realize this until I was a full-grown adult. And at 2 a.m. one morning, I was like, oh no, I blew through yet another time limit. I was playing middle of the night for 2 reasons. 1, it's because when I had time, and 2, it's because that's when my wife sleeps. I was married with a master's degree, and I was a teacher, and we owned a house, and I was a semi-functional adult. But it turns out I wasn't. Because I was playing video games, and fun fact, if you have a behavior that you're hiding from someone who loves you, it's a good chance that behavior is bad for you. That's a freebie for today. So mine was video games. I finished at 2 a.m. I was supposed to be done at midnight. I started at 9. My wife is part cat. She goes to bed very early. My wife can sleep for 11 hours and then still take a 90-minute nap. And go right back to bed at 9. It's like a life skill. I'm like, you're going to live to 150. This is incredible. You're so healthy. But I did not. I was like a semi-trained just insomniac and played video games as long as I could. And this morning it was 2 a.m. I was like, rats, I got to be up in 4 hours to go to church. And I got to put a smiley face on because then my wife will ask questions. If she asks questions, I'm going to lie. Because if you never tell someone, it's not lying. I'm not so sure, but that was my logic at least. If she asks me a direct question, I'm going to have to tell her, and that'll cause issues. If she never asks me, then we're gravy. So I said a quick prayer before bed that night. I said, Dear Lord, please help video games not be a problem. Amen. Went to sleep, totally forgot, went to church at Northwest Foursquare out at Federal Way. Pastor Steve Shell said, we're talking through Romans. We're doing a 2-part series starting this week on addiction. And my actual response was, that's really good. Someone here needs to hear this. Right? I was completely oblivious. I did not remember that prayer from the previous night. I was trying to keep my eyes open. I don't recall the first half of the sermon, but partway through, he drops this little ditty. He said, if you're asking God to help you manage your sin, you're praying the wrong prayer. God doesn't manage sin, he kills it. And I was like, oh no. Because I loved video games. Video games are how I processed my reality. My friends and I played video games. I was a teacher. I still don't know the point of video games. Like, what am I doing with 3 months of my life? Just like twiddling my thumbs, working in my backyard. 3 weeks later, so that day, May 15th, 2011 is the last day I play a video game. 3 weeks later, I'm digging a hole in my backyard, semi-morbidly. Like, I'm like, I don't know what a person does with their life without video games. Just like dig holes, I guess. So I'm back there, and I have this little argument with God. I'm like, dear Lord, do you mean to say the rest of my life is wake up, go to work, come home, do more work, go to bed, rinse, repeat, and then I die? And the Lord asked me a very gracious little question, which was simply, do you trust me? Now, that's a gracious question on twofold. One, we all know the right answer because we've read the account with Peter on the beach and the denial, and we get that. I'm like, yeah, I got it, point made. But there's also the whole point where he's asking me my own question because I don't. Like, would I really be this mad at you if I trusted you? Like, if I knew God that was better than video games, I probably wouldn't be this upset about it. But I don't. I kind of think you're robbing me. I think you're being unfair and unkind, and that dude is way worse than me. I didn't even play the bad ones. Now I don't know what to do with my life because I don't know how to process reality. Amen. And I very graciously was just asked, do you trust me? Repeatedly. I never got a good answer because I wanted an explanation. Like, okay, it's fine. I totally trust you and all that stuff, but would you just tell me why? Well, there's a really good reason. You ever had one of those times where you're really glad God didn't tell you what was going to come next? Because you would have been like Jonah and bought one ticket for not Nineveh. Been like, no, I'm checking out early. Hard no. Well, about 12 months from now, then my life was going to implode, and it turns out I had no emotional maturity. Because when I had a good day, what do you think I did to celebrate? Right. Graduating high school, getting married, all of these things were like, I just got engaged. My buddy's like, let's go play video games. Like, that's the way my life went. My bachelor party involved a lot of video games. Don't judge me. We had fun. But guess what I did when I had a hard day? You got it. When I fought with my wife? When a friend passed, guess what I did right after the funeral? Yeah, it was a coping mechanism. I was definitely medicating with video games, and I had zero emotional intelligence to like process real feelings. I just played video games until they kind of went away into the background. Not a healthy way to handle your emotions, by the way. They come out sideways, it turns out. So the Lord is very graciously planning on preparing me for that. I am very thankful for it, but it was a hard season that we went into. I was more prepared than I would have been. And where we end up is I, through a series of events, have 10 hours a week on my hands. Now, some of you are like, that's sad. He was a grown married adult playing 10 hours of video games a week. Just know there's also people in the room who are like, that's sad. He calls himself a video gamer. And he only played 10 hours a week. So I don't impress anyone with that number, but 10 hours a week is exactly how much time it takes to volunteer with Young Life. So I went to an informational meeting. Don't know if you've ever been to an informational meeting about Young Life, but they work like this. 30 families get introduced to the concept of Young Life, and then you're introduced as Nathan Sutherland, Aylin, Young Life's leader. And that's news to you as well. I've never been to a club. I've never been to a camp. I had no idea what Young Life was about. That's why I came to an informational meeting. My dad was there, and he just looked at me and was like, good for you. Well, here we go. And I loved it. That was actually a major inspiration for me starting a nonprofit. But at the end of the day, when we talk about healthful tech, when we talk about real-world experiences, it's not just because the real world has less problems. It's because some of us have created a dependence on technology. Mine was video games. I haven't played one in, 13 years now? I don't know. People always ask, like, do you think you ever will? Like, I don't know. Are there going to be video games in heaven? What's your eschatology of technology? Because maybe then. But until then, like, there's still something broken in me. I use them wrong for too long, and when I get around them, my brain gets weird. And so I have to be very careful with my life of how I handle that technology, and that's going to be true for you, and it's going to be true for your kids, and rather than just trying to fix them, because they're not problems to fix, they're people to love, you need to help them see, hey, you react differently to these shows, to this input, to this timing, to whatever it might be. What do you think we should do? Is it a step all the way away? Is it replace it with something else? I play a lot of board games now. There are actually even some board games I can't handle because I fixate on them like a weirdo. But you at least don't get overstimulated with video games, right? And it's really hard to overplay by yourself. Like, you can, but it takes work. And again, my wife at some point would judge me back into reality. So here's what we're going to talk about with beneficial stress. There's 5 things you can do instead. You've removed it. What do you replace it with? These 5. Beneficial stress comes directly out of Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation. I've taken my own little spin on it, but that's a phrase he uses in like chapter 3. It's right around page 70. So beneficial stress, the first one you're going to allow your child to do, is risk. You're going to allow your child to take a reasonable amount of risk. I say reasonable because your child and my child might be able to do different levels of risk. Maybe your child can mountain climb. My children cannot. So they're not going to do much in terms of free climbing. They're going to have lots of ropes and pads and helmets. But if your child's trained at that and they can do it, cool. My children did the pump track in Leavenworth. Now, you can eat it hard on a pump track. If you've ever been to one of these, it's free play, free roam, but you try to go straight over that middle berm, and you're eating nothing but asphalt on the way down, okay? You can break bones, but I promise fixing a broken bone is easier than fixing a broken heart. So we want to make sure that our children get the opportunity to experience risk. It's part of how they're wired. It's important for behavioral development, and it's how God made them. It's how you get a healthy adult, is they know their limits. Risk is part of that. Another example of risk, go ahead, is you might allow your children to play in open water. I actually just included this picture because it's a humble brag that I've been to the Oregon coast when it's sunny. It's kind of a big deal. I don't know. But this was our choice. Oregon coast is dangerous. All of our children do know how to swim, and we did have adults. This isn't fully free play. This is just risk. We allow them into the ocean. You may not allow them. That's okay. But you need to choose a level of risk that allows them to exercise some of their agency, allow them to make some choices and mistakes. Can you die doing just this? Yeah, even on the Oregon coast. Rogue waves are a thing, and they're nuts, and they're horrible. And knowing that we made a calculated decision. Risk ties in seamlessly with responsibility. Responsibility is where you allow your child to do something that you could have done for them, and they're going to do worse than you would have done it. That's my 8-year-old son biking to piano. Look at his little backpack. It's like 2/3 the size of his body. By the way, it's a video. On my computer, you can click it, and it'll show him biking away, and he doesn't look back once. He does not have a phone on him. There's no little blue dot. He's biking 6 blocks. We've walked it, we've biked it, and we've driven there. He knows one house between here and there that he could stop at if he gets lost. I have no way of confirming he's arrived. I have an hour to wait. That should be enough time to bike there, take his lesson, and come home. After an hour, I found a backpack in my garage, but not my son. He had just dropped it and walked into my house and was like playing Legos in a corner like he was awesome. Because my 8-year-old, having responsibility, showed him that he actually could do some things on his own. Now, keep in mind, that's my absent-minded professor. That's Henry, not Owen. Owen, I would have let go at 6. But Henry, I'm like, oof, I don't know, buddy. Like, I did peek over the first time because there's a really busy road right behind our house that he has to cross. And I'm like, oh, Lord, look both ways, Henry. Like, we've worked on it, and you've told him a lot, but you're like, I don't know. He could just be a little road pancake. But it's a road with real cars, and I'm not there. Like, this is a real responsibility, right? And while I make light of it, it's a dark humor because it's a reality. Now, he does great. He's done it multiple times. He's made it every single time. Is there still risk involved? Yes. Same risk involved when he goes anywhere without me, that I'm not there to protect him, and that's really the goal. He now knows he's a little more responsible. I now know he's a little more responsible, and yes, there is a LARPing arrow in the bottom left. If you don't know what it means, you don't know what it means, but if you know, you know. Next. This is my son's responsibility. We went fishing in the Puyallup River. They both lose these fish. There's actually videos of them simultaneously pulling them up onto the rocks, and I'm standing next to them, and the fish spits the hook, and my sons just stare at it as it's like, and I basically just refuse to grab it for them. I'm like, there's your fish, get it. And they're like, and then the fish swims off, and they're just like, right? Like, there's few things more traumatic than fighting a fish in and losing it on the gravel, right there in front of you. But it's also really important. Like, hey, guess what? Losing is an option in real life, and that fish just won. Like, so then they only asked to use barbed hooks. I'm like, no, that's cheating, actually. You can't do that. It's literally illegal on this river. But it's part of responsibility. Maybe not what you would choose, but it's an option. And then there comes free play. Oh, actually, skip the next one because it'll be... No, this is the right one. Go back one. That's good. Right there in the middle, do you see those little itty bitty blurbs? Little color dots? So we were in Ohanabakash. We went camping. This is our third day. We're packing up. The boys go, can we play? They've shown responsibility over the previous days. They've experienced some of the risk of the woods. They know their way around, so I can take a calculated risk for my children. Go, sure, you got 2 hours. We're going to be packing up camp. I'll come get you. 90 minutes in, I go looking for them. I can hear them. They're making a ton of noise in the back. I make my way back, and I'm like, oh, my. They're up there on top of that rock. Go to the next one. They have built a lean-to with Henry's shirt. It is 48 degrees at 10 a.m. on Mount Rainier. Henry clearly does not have the body fat to manage this. And oh, by the way, I don't know the middle kid. Some kind of wood gnome who just showed up to play with my children. But like that was awesome. And Owen, yes, for all 2 hours wore his helmet because safety first for our organized children. Why not just wear your helmet? But like, that's so cool. And they are pumped about it. We went back later and like, this is now something they love. They're learning a little more responsibility. Free play, meaning non-parent directed. So organized sports don't count. Wonderful to join an organized sport, but that is different than what we're talking about here. What can you do when your child's tech is unhealthy? You replace it with risk, reasonable risk, with responsibility, both as part of your family and in their own life. Yes, 13-year-old child, you can go to that park without me. Right? You can take, now, maybe not right off the bat, and certainly not if they've proven a harm to themselves or others, but if they have shown a level of responsibility reasonable to that, then sure, maybe that's something you do. And free play. I'm not going to come with you for the first bit. You guys go nuts. I'm not saying just send them off to play Frogger on the highway. I'm saying we pick to replace unhealthy tech. We pick real-world experiences, and it has a way of calibrating them and building some of that adventure God has made them for. All right, so skip for me, Cameron. This is the one I meant. Yeah, that one. That's fine. We get the idea. Keep going. More humble brags. Onward. All right. So for you guys, reflect. Cameron. Beneficial stress, remember, is risk, responsibility, and free play. Just 30 seconds. Turn to the person next to you. What's one way you could tie that in this coming week? Because we can do this in simple little everyday ways. Go. Ten seconds. All right. It's probably worth sharing. Henry biking to piano was a direct result of us reading The Anxious Generation. We were super convicted in reading that and being like, oh man, like we are so fearful about Henry showing up with like his head screwed on that like we overprotect him sometimes from consequences like losing fish. Because we just were like, well, we know you can't do it. It's like, we're going to do it for you. And like, he can do it. He's going to do it differently. And he's not going to do it like Owen. But like, he can do it. And that was a challenge for us. So that is, I'm not saying that's what you have to do, but just so you know, like, it's challenging for us raising our own children, realizing like, oh, all right, like maybe we do need to let the reins off a little bit and let them find their limits and boundaries in healthy and intentional ways. Which brings us to making tech safe at home. The moment we've all been waiting for. The reason I don't start with this is because all you really want when you show up is 5 good rules to apply and fix your kids' tech problems. Or your spouses. Some of you here for your spouse. I get it. Uncomfortable laughter. The reason I don't is because if good rules were all we needed to fix our tech, then we wouldn't need a New Testament. Most of this comes down to a heart issue, that there's more than just, if we just had some better rules, we built some better walls. What we're actually going to talk about with this, go ahead, Cameron, is this first starting with the idea that the internet's a new cul-de-sac. We need to understand what we're dealing with when we talk about the internet. Well, a lot of families say, well, yeah, but. I totally hear what you're saying, and. My child needs to be online because that's where his friends are, that's where her friends are, that's where they're learning, that's where they're making friends, and that's true. But the cul-de-sac of the internet, we need to recognize where it's located. It's located next to the freeway and a federal penitentiary in the red light district at midnight. That's what the internet is. And if you're cool with your child going there, then gravy. But like, it's not just the cul-de-sac outside that you can see from your window. It can become more like that, but it takes some serious work and investment on your part. Some very real conversations with your child. So the internet cul-de-sac is a different kind of cul-de-sac than you and I grew up in and played till the streetlights went out. Right? That's wonderful. There are opportunities to reclaim some of that, especially now that this Anxious Generation book has come out and we're seeing swaths. There's a small town, I want to say it was out of Texas. Chris McKenna at Protect Young Eyes shouted this out. He said they made a phone-free month where they're basically making like a summer camp for their small town. Like, we are hosting, barn raisings and bonfires and pig cook-offs. And like, we're doing all the things every single night. We're just going to do 30 nights of activities. And everyone's turning their phones in. And basically opting in, yes, we want to do this. And like, as a town, like, what a cool way to reclaim a small town. Now, it may not work in the size we've got, but could we do that with like a small community of people? Could you grab your church community and be like, hey, let's talk about this as an option, not as punitive, not as like, figure out the real world, kids, but like, let's figure out fun together. So just know that the internet is a little bit of a tricky spot sometimes. So we talk about building hedges. I like this picture because look at the scale of that hedge. I dig it, right? Like, sure, maybe it's a 150-foot tall hedge, but the point is it's not a wall. You're not building a fortress. You're not putting in moats with sharks and lasers on their heads. You are building a hedge, which blocks line of sight, which keeps the bad stuff out there for a while, but is still permeable. Stuff's going to come into your house. It's going to leave your house. They're still humans who you plan on launching one day, and your job is not get them to stay in the fortress forever. Your job is to get them to recognize danger for what it is and make decisions that glorify God and that are good for their own hearts and lives. So there's 3 areas we're going to build hedges. The first area is going to be around our network. So 3 areas are network, devices, and family. If you do not have all 3 of these covered, your tech is not safe. By that I mean, your network is the thing that gives you Wi-Fi. You need to know what happens on your smart TV. But Xfinity gives you a router. You can shut the internet off at 8, but that means your Nest no longer works. You can't control the temperature of your house. Like, you can't see who's at the front door, and your Roomba no longer functions. Like, so you need a feature that allows you to both know what happens on your Wi-Fi and provides a good level of service, like your Wi-Fi still works. So here's 2. The first one is the Griffin router. So a router is a thing, there's a cord that comes out of the wall, plugs into a modem. The modem makes the data points from the wall make sense to your home. You could just plug directly into your modem and you'd have that Cat 5 style, what most of us probably had in college. Internet level, like a LAN party for one. Oh, LAN parties, weren't those the best? I have a few regrets, the Lord. Maybe there'll be LAN parties in heaven. They're social. There's also an option to do a Bark home, okay? So the Griffin router is the thing the modem plugs into that sends Wi-Fi. It's very high level. When I connected it, my internet speed went up by 30% because the router was just a better router. So that's the top thing. The bottom thing plugs into your modem or even to your router and provides you abilities like setting time limits for certain devices. So you can put all the kids' school devices to bed at 8. You can put their laptops or their e-readers to bed, right? Like, you can do that with just the bottom option. It's called the Bark Home. Bark is the parent company. They have a really cool phone. They have a really cool software. And then they have this device. The top one is if you're like, hey, you know what? Our router's going to go out anyway, and we want fast internet. Cool. Buy that thing. It's about $250. The bottom thing is cheaper. There's a monthly subscription if you want some of the accountability that comes with it. They can run Bark, which is an accountability software that looks at searches. So if a kid looks up self-harm or is bullied or looks up anything that's concerning in terms of text-based or relational-based, Bark is really good. Little digital dog to go out to the internet, cul-de-sac with your kid, and yell when something goes wrong. And it provides you with talking points. What I really like about any Bark product is it's not you spying on your kid. I want to be clear on this. If you believe your child needs to be spied on in order to be safe online, don't put them on the internet. The internet is a level of risk and responsibility they need to show in real life. So when you read that Luke verse where Jesus says, one who's faithful in little will be faithful with much, we need to recognize that that's referencing our children. If you can't be nice to people in real life, I can't trust you to be nice to people on the internet. I know exactly 0 people who are better on the internet as people than they are in real life. So that goes with a mitigated amount of searching of your child's device, because I gave you this device because you've earned it. You've shown me you're trustworthy. I'm still going to have accountability because I don't hate you. I want, when something goes wrong, to be the first person to know so I can love you well and we can assess. But I'm not going to scroll through every single text. I promise you, there are kids in this room, if you've given them access to social media, I promise there are kids in this room who delete their social media on the daily. Like, they'll download TikTok on the way to school and they delete it on the way home. Because the user data is saved on their phone, all they need is the portal. So they'll just re-download and pick up right where they left off. That's what happens when you start creeping on your kid. Okay? You push them into secrecy rather than to open relationship. And if you can't trust them, don't trust them. It's going to hurt them and you. So it's perfectly reasonable to say, you know what? I love you, and because I love you, I can't give you this. You haven't earned that yet with your reset. Fine. You're very loving. It's a perfectly fine thing to say. Smartphones are not a human right. But on the network side, you want to make sure your network is protected. But that doesn't protect from devices. You have a smart device that enters your home with its own cell service. It doesn't care what your Wi-Fi does. So the Wi-Fi side is, you have a babysitter, you have a friend who brings over a Kindle or a video game console of some variety, wants to connect to your Wi-Fi. They now have to follow your family's Wi-Fi rules. You blocked certain websites, you set certain time limits, and it shows you everywhere everyone went. It shows burner phones really well, the network level protection. Burner phones are where your kid finds that iPhone 7 that you knew didn't have internet and forgot that it still connects to Wi-Fi, and they can now go to just unmitigated internet using a burner phone. It'll pop up on your Bark or your Griffin. Okay, it'll show up as a new user. And you'll go, interesting. We now have a 6th device in our 5-person family. Fascinating. Turn it off, go talk to my kids, see what we can do here. And by the way, if no one confesses, you now have a different level of trust than you had, and the boundaries come back further. Go, great, that's fine. Like, I'm not looking to win this, but if no one has this device, someone's using it. So, like, I just need to pull the hedge way, 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 way back, and the internet just isn't a thing for you right now, and we're going to go play outside. Devices, though, provide accountability is our goal. Again, with the Bark, so hit me, Cameron. This is Bark. Hit one more. I like this next one. All right, so you can monitor content. The whole thinks you're a loser. The whole school thinks you're a loser. I like that one because you go talk to your kid and you're like, hey, why did Johnny say that? And they're like, oh, I actually told him that at lunch. Right? Like, kids say terrible things to one another and think they're funny. So just know your child may have started it. So that's why we ask. Manage screen time. Hey, you can't use this device between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. The internet isn't going to function. You can set that right from the parent side. Filter websites, blocked Fortnite, but not Minecraft. Why? And set location alerts. This would be like, your child arrived at school, and it gives you a little notification thumbs up. So this is some of the functionality. If you're using Bark, I strongly encourage you, just use the Bark phone. Buy that device. It's through Verizon. It's a great option. It's inexpensive for what it is. It's a high-quality phone in terms of your child won't get like beat up for having a dumb phone. But it's just quirky through Apple specifically. If you want to use Bark through an iPhone, it doesn't work great. And that's iPhone's fault, not Bark's fault. But they've made a wonderful device that still works really well. All right. So if you wanted pornography-specific protection, Covenant Eyes is a great option. Covenant Eyes has an awesome AI program they now use that scans all your screenshots. Cameron, next picture. Looks like that. So it'll give you a red light, a green light, or a yellow, like you see there, that says, hey, this person may need to get followed up with. And it's just a blurred image of the picture. It never actually fully unblurs it. So people can't read your bank statements or anything. If you're worried about that, it's too scrambled to get there. But they'll get a good idea. It'll show the website it came off or the app that was used. Again, Android device specifically. So if you have an iPhone like me, I love my phone because it's so dumb. My family, my 4 sisters, will not allow me to show up in green in a group text. So I have an iPhone. But as someone who's easily distractible, my iPhone is really, really dumb. There's 2 pages. There's no social media, including YouTube, because, guys, biking boats is like a thing that I have to deal with. So I don't have any social media. I don't have any distraction. I don't have an app store. That's right. I downloaded the parental controls, asked a buddy to set the password, and don't have an app store because I like making good decisions. Like, I enjoy focusing and being present, and sometimes my brain doesn't let me, and sometimes tech works with my brain to destroy my life. So I have Covenant Eyes on my browser. So everything I see is seen by two other people who care about me, which if you think about it, it's not policing at this point. I asked for it. I'm an adult. This is what we want our kids to do. We want our kids to go, you know what? I think I struggle with A, B, and C, and this is what I'm doing in faith. Remember that James 2 thing of like, you have faith by just your feelings, but I'm going to show you what I believe by what I do. I believe Jesus is risen. I believe he's the king of my life. I believe he is better than video games. And I believe it enough to lock down my phone that constantly is asking me, are you sure though? You sure? Have you tried this one though? This one might be better than Jesus. You should probably try it. And with Covenant Eyes, that goes all the way back to 7th grade. I first ran into pornography online with dial-up internet, and it took time to make a mistake. Like you had to download that mistake at 28.8, right? With internet that told people you were about to make a mistake. Like, try being sneaky at 2 a.m. with that internet. Right? But now I have internet in my pocket, and I want to make good choices. How do you do it? You get some accountability. Two other people always in the room. It's true anyway. God sees it. But think of the number of mistakes you wouldn't have made if grandma was always there. I love telling high schoolers, like, I want to make good choices and love Jesus. I just don't have the willpower. I'm like, really? Invite her dad on the next date. You'll have willpower for days. He's huge. All of a sudden, you're made of willpower. Fascinating, isn't it? That's what we're doing with our technology. We're building an accountability, not so we can catch people making mistakes and go, aha, I knew you were a screw up, but saying, hey, you want to make good choices. I want to support you in that. Let's do this. And it gives us lovely talking points. All right, next one. Then we build a hedge around our family. So we have the devices, which are accountable, even if they're at home or away. Then we have the network that's providing Wi-Fi to our family. And now we need our family to know what we're expecting. It looks really like this. We want to make sure that our tech is safe and ready and good. And I'm actually going to end on this. There's a little more to say, so when I skip past slides, don't freak out. Safe, ready, good. We want our children to understand, is it safe? So with this example, we're using Luke 11:11. Which parent among you, if your child asks for an egg, would hand them a scorpion? Your kid goes, Mom or Dad, for Christmas this year, I really want a smartphone. All my friends have them, be so amazing. You're like, yeah. There's few things better than giving a good gift at Christmas, right? And Hadley's the best. If you just want to come over to my house and give Hadley a present, she will make you feel 10 out of 10. Hadley does not matter what it is. Like, present, you're the best one. I love this. It's what I've always wanted. I don't know what it is, but it's incredible. Like, amazing. So you want to give your kid that incredible gift, and that's great. But not if it's going to hurt them or someone else. And that's a talking point we can have. The safest tech we have, so it's Bible verse next, Cameron. Let's see it. Do it. Yeah. All right, so that's the verse we just referenced. One more. All right. Safest tech is going to be tool tech with no web browser, no app store, and accountability baked right in. That's the safest tech. Now, can you take risk because of responsibility and some free play for your child? Absolutely, but it's a calculated risk. Make sure they've shown that responsibility in real life before you throw it in digitally. The safest tech, something like Cameron, Gab phone. Gab phones are amazing. If you have a 6th grader that's starting to do sports that you're not always at, needs to be able to text you in practices over, one of these. No app store, no browser. Can take pictures but can't send or receive them. I like to call these dumb phones. Gab, by the way, doesn't like me calling them dumb phones. They've told me that. I'm like, too bad. It's really catchy. Dumb phone. These are dumb phones. They don't do any of the smartphone distraction stuff. They only do what you tell them to do. They're the epitome of tool tech. If you went and check out and entered Gospel Tech, you'd get a discount. We've partnered with them on that, and I don't make any money off that. That just goes right back to the nonprofit. So it's a way we can serve you and provide more resources for more families. The other example is what I told you about the Bark phone. So this is the actual phone itself. Again, operating system is Bark, meaning it doesn't run on iOS or on Android. It runs on Bark, which technically is probably Android in its roots. But be that as it may, monitoring text, monitoring location, setting different safety levels is managing time limits. Remotely lock the phone. Something's going sideways. You don't like it. Phone's done. Talk to you when you come home. It's a wonderful safety feature, and my favorite part is that it releases apps one at a time, meaning you have a 7th grader who has just earned the opportunity to start having a phone to go to school. That's fine. By the way, my encouragement is 15, just to get ahead of the Q&A. 15 is when your kid needs a smartphone. But let's say 7th grader 13 gets it because she's responsible and she's in elite volleyball and she needs to communicate with lots of people, but her team communicates through WhatsApp. Using a Bark phone, you can release just WhatsApp. And there's still accountability using Bark on it. But she can now communicate with her team directly instead of using your device because she's earned that opportunity. Bark lets you do that instead of doing it by age level, which is how like an iPhone does it. Everything under 8, well, Temu is under 8 and it has porn on it. So pretty rough to lock down an iPhone. An iPhone knows, but it's bad for business and they're $1 trillion company, so they don't care. Gospel Tech 10, I don't know why the 10. I asked them to just put Gospel Tech and they're like, it's done. Like, couldn't you change it? No. Like, all right, cool. Thanks, guys. So Gospel Tech 10 on Bark. The next one, so that's is it safe? Next is are they ready? You can take perfectly safe tech and hand it to a kid who's not ready. We are talking Luke 16:10. I referenced it once already, but if your child is faithful in little, they can be faithful in much. I'm using that reset as our simple talking point. Is my child ready for this smartphone? I don't know. How are they doing with their relationships and responsibilities? How are they doing with their emotional health? How are they handling their sleep and their time? Those are the questions we're asking to show then, yeah, sure. You want a smartphone? I believe you are responsible and you are ready for this. Let's go for it. The tech is safe enough. Can you make a calculated risk and choose Drool Tech to give to the child? Sure. But you're doing that as a loving parent, knowing that this is good for the kid. My kids don't currently play video games because their dad has issues. They've played at friends' houses, but we don't have them inside our house. And that's a conversation that we have that I'm like, some of this may just be fear because of mistakes I've made, guys. I want to acknowledge that. I don't want to parent from fear, but I do have a weird amount of fear about video games and your brains because I see how much you're like me, and I'm very worried of introducing this high-octane amusement built for the average gamer, by the way, who's 32. That's where the amusement level is set. And we're handing that to people who don't have any scar tissue built up. I have 20 some odd years of calluses from overstimulation. That's what the new PlayStation at $800 is supposed to do, is blast like a laser beam through that entertainment scar tissue. Don't hand that to a 10-year-old right before bed and then wonder why he or she can't sleep. It's because their brain is just vibrating from the amount of information it just took in. Faithful in little, they can be faithful in much. Finally, you need to create a framework, at least around these 4. When do we use it? Where do we use it? What content is appropriate? And what does safety look like? I bring up the safety one because there was a research piece that just came out that said 1 in 2 teenage girls who use social media. It's about 3/4 of girls are on social media at teenagers. 50% of those girls say they've been approached by a stranger in a way that made them feel uncomfortable. If I told you that 1 in 2 girls who go to a public park would be approached by a stranger in a way that made them uncomfortable. If I said 1 in 2 girls who play sports will be approached by a stranger in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable, we would freak out. We would lose our collective minds. And instead we go, yeah, that seems right. That stacks up. That's concerning. We want to make sure we've talked about it. If you cannot say the words pornography and pedophile to your child, do not let them on the internet, because they no longer have the words to defend themselves. They will not be able to spot one when they see it. And if you don't want to have to say the word pornography and you want to find a workaround, get a book like Good Picture, Bad Picture. It's lovely. It gives you some words to say it without saying pornography. But the last 3 episodes, I guess the last 2 in the next week's episode of the Gospel Tech podcast, cover these 3. So we do time and place and content with a little bit of safety, but mostly content. All right. And then, Cameron, skip with me, would you? Yeah, that's all right. You can keep going. Yeah, baby. All right. Keep going. One more. All right. Stop here. We've said lots. I promised you all the words. You may have thought I was joking. But those of you I introduced myself to beforehand, I have so many words. And we're not done, but we've started. What you now have is the ability to think through tech. I skipped over the good because the good is something you've heard a lot. Read Galatians 5:22. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. If you have any tech that produces more of that in your child, keep it. Buy one for a friend. If you have any that produces the other stuff of 5:19 through 21, like lust and anger and dissension and envy and jealousy, like Instagram, maybe think about taking a step away. That's all that was to say. We now know there's 2 kinds of tech, one that's built to help you create and one that's built to help you consume. We now know how to assess if it's healthy or not. It may not be a problem. Your kid could play all the video games in the world and phenomenal reset, impeccable, 0 out of 5 areas impeded, and it makes them better at friendships and better at finding joy and better at managing their time. Cool. But now you know. And if it's a problem, you now have talking points. And yes, I'll just get it out now. Reset is a phenomenal way to address this with your loving, caring spouse that you're oh so worried about. Men typically are worried about their wives' compulsive use of social media, and women are usually worried about their husband's use of coping with video games because they need it. Not that I would know anything about that. Those people out there seem to have problems. Reset shows it up pretty quick, and it gives you a loving talking point. I'm no longer just mad at your pastime or a passion you have. I'm now saying, hey, when you do A, B happens. Do you see that? Am I misunderstanding this? It gives you a loving talking point that allows you to work with them rather than against them. Finally, building healthful hedges. We can do things in love, not in fear. Put protections around your network. Put protections around every single device in your home. Now, there is a concern of people going, yeah, but that costs a lot. And I would say, yeah, it does. But you already bought the car. Don't skimp on the seatbelt. You already bought the thing that's going to drive the internet highway and do the damage. Let's still purchase the things that are going to mitigate some of that damage if our children are ready for it. So there is cost involved. None of this is inexpensive, but it is important. The cheapest thing to do is just unplug your internet and get rid of your phones. You can wonder whether or not that's going to prepare your kid for a digital world. I understand. But those are our 3 things we can do to make tech safe at home. What I would ask from you, next one. Oh, yeah, these are your next steps. So read the notes tomorrow, because if all you do is go, he said some smart things, you'll be more impressed with me than you will be equipped. Don't be impressed with me. Be equipped. So forget that I ever said these words, but read those notes tomorrow and be like, yes, that is something I feel convicted about. I want to pray about that this week. Then listen to the podcast. The last 3 episodes at the Gospel Tech Podcast are covering just what we talked about there at the end about how do we build healthy boundaries around our tech. And then third and finally, would be build the hedge around your family first. Rather than going out tonight and getting your software and your hardware and the things, get the conversation rolling. If you had to pick one of those 3 hedges because you're just overwhelmed, start with your family. And start with your family and just go with time or place. Just pick one of those little hedge subnotes and go, great, how much time is good for tech?